Nancy Price. This is Nancy Price. I live in Davis, California. I co-convene the Earth Democracy Committee with Randa Salek, who lives in Santa Cruz, California. And I look forward to connecting the Earth Democracy, Climate Justice, Women and Peace campaign with No to NATO. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Now you, Packy. Do you say Packy or Pocky?
Yes,
I say tomato. You say tomato. Usually it's Pocky, but as long as I'm in time for dinner, it's fine. Anyway, I respond to anything. Hi, I'm Pocky. I live in Western Massachusetts. I spent 3 years being the house mother at Code Pink, and I had the pleasure of having George Friday as a visitor once at least, and we had a good time. And I'm glad to see you again. It was good to see you after the Poor People's Assembly. I just came back from NATO's summit and our peace summit prior to that. Where I was really heartened by the Europeans, but I won't go on. Yes.
If you could say what your roles are in WILF and what branch you're in, because we will have time for you to talk more about the other thing.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I'm in Massachusetts. I'm part of the Massachusetts WILF branch, and my greatest thrill is the summer gathering at Robin Lloyd's place. It's worth the price of admission. So that's me.
Thank you, Pocky. Pocky, how long have you been a WILF member?
Oh, on and off for years, probably 20 years, but you know, I've not been an active WILF member. Connected with our sister in Pakistan, whose name I won't remember right now, but when she was in DC too. So more informal interactions and weaving with WILF for many, many years.
Well, thank you, Pocky. And so Linda, it's on you.
I am Linda Modica. I'm with the Jane Addams branch. I've been with a member of WILF since about 2015, 2016, so not very long. I participate when I can with the Disarm committee. I can't say that I have any role particularly in any of the branches or any of the committees, except to contribute whenever I can. I have written for Peace and Freedom a couple of times. I live in the Nolichucky River Valley, which has been contaminated by Nuclear Fuel Services, which is the sole supplier of fuel for the nuclear navy. So I live within an area of the country with an active member of the nuclear military industrial complex.
So
Thank you.
Linda, where is that exactly? What state, what city?
It's in the company the company Nuclear Fuel Services is in Irwin, Tennessee. And I live about 10 miles from there.
Oh, so you live near Irwin, Tennessee.
Yes, yes.
Where is that in relation to Knoxville, Nashville, the Highlander Center?
Oh, the Highlander Center. We're very familiar with them. They are about 50 miles to the west of us. I am almost. Irwin's Nuclear Fuel Services effluent blow into North Carolina. We are very close to the North Carolina border. This is the section of Northeast Tennessee that is just south of Virginia and just west of the North Carolina in the foothills of the Appalachians. So I call our area Atomic Appalachia.
Well, thank you. It's important to know about that. Well, George, you're last. Everybody loves George. Come on, George. Tell people what you do in Wilford.
Okay. Good to see you, Robin Lloyd. Glad you're here.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm George Friday. I am in the Southern Piedmont branch, which was launched just about a year ago with the support and tutelage of Southern Anti-Racism Network and Teresa. So I'm the organizer there. And Teresa mentioned that we co-convened several subcommittees together, including this one. And that's about all for now.
Well, thank you, George. Well, Robin, welcome. We're doing intros, your name, branch, and the roles you play in Wilford.
Yeah, hi everyone, Robin Lloyd, Burlington, Vermont branch down in Rhode Island right now. See the beautiful sea out there.
Wow.
Little Compton, Rhode Island. So I'm sorry to be late because I was on the phone to try to set up a person to take part with Pocky at the gathering. It's coming up next week on the subject of NATO. So I was doing the good work and that's why I was 10 minutes late. So that's all for me. And I'm on the Disarm committee.
Well, great. Well, all of us now have a special role in Wilford as being on this subcommittee of Disarm, which is part of a much larger movement. But the next item on the agenda is for each of us, for those of you who are not me and George, to say what your expectations are for this subcommittee. So we'll start with you, Nancy, since you've been on the phone the longest, and then we'll just hop around to the other folks who are here. So there are 4 of you who are not me and George. And George and I have talked about this extensively, which you'll see from the chart. But Nancy, if you could give us a couple of minutes on what you expect to get out of this subcommittee.
Well, what I would like to get out of this subcommittee is connecting our Climate Justice Women in Peace with the No to NATO, with an emphasis on the not just military carbon footprint and emissions, but the climate emergency that such emissions create and lead to more militarism, more wars, more impact on vulnerable communities and people, and destruction of the environment. I think it's very important and glad you initiated this so that we can really reach out to branches and pull in branches to this work and be collaborative and more expansive in our outreach, education, and mobilization. I'm very glad to work on some materials. I would be very glad to put a webinar together or work together to put one together. And I think this is a great opportunity to collaborate also with allies and other peace groups and environmental groups. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Nancy. You have some unity on those points. So Pocky, could you say what your expectations are for the work of this subcommittee?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is to join with others to raise awareness of NATO. I was referring to it as the wolf in sheep's clothing because it has this wonderful illustrious history being on the right side, the good guys in the Cold War, and it's really been out of sight. Calling it the Trojan horse of the U.S., positioning itself as the world's policeman. So I don't want to go on now, but that's the idea, to join with others, and right now to lobby our representatives around the Defense Department bill. Sure.
Thank you. Linda, what are your expectations for the work of this subcommittee?
Well, I am such a newbie. I don't think I have a right to have expectations, but I would hope that we would develop some short-term and long-term goals that might have an impact, especially on the nuclear weapons that are held by the NATO countries, especially the nuclear weapons that are American weapons, and to somehow reach the point where where they would be withdrawn. That's my one of the reasons why I look forward to working on that aspect, especially that because I see it as a path toward peace. So it's an interim issue, I know that the long-term goal is to end this organization, the alliance, but in the short term, I would want to develop some kind of strategy that would join with others, of course, not just within WILF, but with the other peace organizations around the world, to get U.S. weapons out of Europe, and in part because of the war in Ukraine. I saw that I mentioned this during our Disarm committee meeting, that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was the withdrawal of the one of the reasons for why Brezhnev was willing to back off was because the United States withdrew its nuclear weapons from Turkey. I see that as an important and a necessary thing to happen now, and but not just from Turkey, from all of the countries where the United States has nuclear weapons. We need to get rid of it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Linda. Because the intersectionality between NATO and the TPNW is something we can certainly make clear to everyone, because that victory of the TPNW going into force is definitely directly, inextricably linked with NATO, with these 13,000 nuclear weapons around the world. But Robin, your thoughts on what you would like to see come out of this subcommittee? Robin, are you there?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for setting up this strategy chart, and your links are very interesting. And to my mind, the most bogus part of NATO is their claim that they are going to reduce carbon emissions. They're going to become whatever it is, carbon free in 2030. And, they are in charge of all the planes that are using the most. So we know that, but I'm just saying that, to my mind, is an aspect of it that we can focus on and help people become aware of. And there's one problem about lobbying around the defense bill is that, for example, trying to get Eleanor Norton's bill connected to the National Defense Authorization Act becomes difficult, because what if they accept it? Then our people have to vote for it because they got one good tweak onto the bill. So that's something we have to think about and be careful of. And so all I'm saying is I'm trying to set up something to bring people in my second community of Rochester, Vermont, together with different positions, together with Pocky. And that was one of the themes of the talk yesterday on NATO, was reaching out to other groups. And also, of course, Teresa's idea was, as I got it, walking in the streets. Well, I mean, that's going to take a bit of time because there aren't enough people who care and know what it's about. But I think as time goes on and as NATO's activities start to be revealed, there will be more people coming forward, and we need to be in touch with him. So that's my thoughts.
Well, thank you, Robin. What I said last night was the importance of building a mass movement. I think what we've learned during this COVID experience, that we could do a lot of work. We started 4 new branches in the South during COVID. So I know what can be done for organizers who are committed, Robin. So part of what I do is I teach organizing in Columbus with the people I work with in the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. And so that means recruiting new members consistently. You must always be recruiting. That's how you build a mass movement. The next item on the agenda is the Massachusetts Peace Action event last night. And I think George and I, Pocky was a speaker there. So I'd like to hear from Pocky first on her evaluation of the meeting, because it really rocked from my perspective with Ann Wright, Joseph Gerson, and you, Pocky. It was a really lively discussion. So what's your assessment, Pocky, of how the event went last night?
Well, thanks, Teresa. I mean, one of the things that I was impressed with, as we all were, was the number of people who showed up. We had quite a number of people. And I think what it's telling us is people are aware, or becoming aware of NATO and what it's doing. I mean, what NATO is doing to all the NATO countries and the rest of the world is a macrocosm of what the United States is doing. I think the information that both Anne and Joseph gave, and they're both so well steeped in this, was so telling, and particularly NATO was the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And for those of us, and I think everybody here is old enough to remember, that once upon a time, there was a Warsaw Pact, and the people of the West were concerned that the Soviet Union was going to keep expanding west. And so under that guise, and I say guise because I don't think they were so naive to say, oh, this is why we're doing it, but it looked good. And so they sent Dwight Eisenhower, the hero of the Second World War, to all these different European countries to invite them to be part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And what it basically did was it gave fuel to the Cold War fire.
Well, thank you, Pocky. The good news is that the video, Cole Harrison, is pretty amazing. He's one of my new best friends. I've been getting all of these best friends out of the work that we're doing. And so Cole has already sent out the video. So I posted the video to the Wilf Smart group on Facebook, and I will post it to the Disarm group. Anybody else who has a video who can get to it before I can, because I'll be driving as soon as this meeting ends, 400 miles back home to where I live. But George, if you have a chance to post the video to the Disarm committee list, then they can hear from Ann and Joseph and Pocky in real time, so to speak. But the other good thing that came out of the meeting last night, quite a few people were sending me direct messages about what I said about building the mass movement. So someone in Boston named Andre, who has this global nonviolence movement, well, I don't know what pronouns Andre uses. And so I've asked, but it's all about women being engaged. And I know Andre could be a man's name, but since the work that's being described is about women's engagement, I did ask Andre for the pronouns, because I don't want to make a mistake saying he when it's really she. Very good accomplishment or from last night. But the most important, I think, thing that happened last night is Tamara Lawrence of Wilf, Canada. She and I direct message each other, and she said, I asked her if she would be willing to speak at a No NATO webinar in October. So based on our chart and our timeline, we have agreement from her, which gives us enough time, Robin, to do the kind of planning we did, like for the AFRICOM webinar. There were close to 240 people in the event last night. I think if we take a month or so to plan in October, No NATO, with Pocky speaking and Ann Wright and Tamara from Wilf Canada, it would be really well attended. We got over 300 people in the AFRICOM webinar and over 107 organizations endorsing. So I think we would use that same process, Robin, that we used for the AFRICOM webinar to do the No NATO webinar organized by Wilf Disarm. That's what I'm proposing. So could we stop for a moment just to hear reactions to that proposal? So Robin, you first, because you worked on the AFRICOM webinar.
Yeah,
Where are you, Robin?
That sounds like a great idea. October to have a webinar. Yes.
Well, good. I think we can pull it off. What do you say, Linda? What do you think?
I just put a thumbs up. Sounds excellent.
Nancy's hand is
Thank you.
raised.
You learned. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I think that would be terrific because the next COP27 meeting in Egypt, for which there will be a Wilf delegation, is the first week of November in Egypt. So I think if we plan a webinar in October sometime that would lead up to that, it would be wonderful.
Well, at our next meeting, we'll definitely pick a date because Tamara has already said that she'll do it. And I've seen her speak at other events. And she spoke last night, and she's real serious. Wilf Canada, just think if we had Wilf Canada and Wilf US with a collaboration of No to NATO, that would be the North America part of the NATO thing. And so I'm very excited. I'm glad you all think it's a good idea. Well, let's
Could I add something?
go right ahead.
Yeah, so I did talk with Tamara last night about collaborating with Canada and the US. It might be good if we find somebody to speak about how NATO is expanding into other countries, particularly Central and South America. I think people don't know much about that, but it is what is beginning to happen, particularly Colombia, for example. So we might want to have another speaker.
Oh, well, I think we're going to have quite a few speakers. We definitely need to have a speaker or two from the European sections because that is where there is a high concentration, and that is the next war theater is Europe. As we can see with the Russia-Ukraine situation, we have got to have the Europeans to stand up and say, NATO is a bad idea. It really provoked Russia into thinking that they had no other choice but to keep Ukraine from joining NATO. And now they're talking about maybe Ukraine will still join NATO anyway. So whose hand is up?
Nancy.
No, sorry, I was lowering it. Very sorry.
Oh, so
Oh,
Pocky.
no, that's fine. Yeah, we'll plan on the next meeting we have in August, Nancy, be thinking about facilitating that meeting. So part of that meeting will be planning the webinar and starting to come up with a list of speakers beyond Ann Wright, Pocky, Tamara, and I say we maybe get Madeline Reese to be a speaker because she wrote that wonderful position about Wilf being no to NATO, which was many years ago. And I'm thinking having Madeline Reese as a speaker would kind of take in the whole aspect of Wilf in Europe and everywhere. But we can talk about it more at the next meeting.
Pocky's hand is up.
Let me just tell you, one of the people I met and was so impressed with in Madrid was Ulla Klotzer. She was one of the two women who came from Finland, and she was quite compelling. This Women for Peace. There isn't a Wilf group there that's extant, but it could be revived, and she'd be one of the revivers. But the thing that she's totally outspoken against NATO coming into Finland, and one of the things that was interesting that I think is useful for all of us to be aware of is before the war started on Ukraine, only 20% of the people of Finland supported joining NATO.
Right.
After the war started, 62% of the people of Finland wanted to join NATO or were interested in joining NATO. So I think we need to look at that dimension in the lives of them, but also of us, and that's that fear, and how that plays into so many people saying, well, we do, I'm a pacifist, but I think we need to have NATO. And we've heard that kind of thing said.
Right.
And I think we need to really demythologize that and expose NATO for what it is, the Trojan horse.
Well, Pocky, it would be perfect if we could have someone from Finland and Sweden because they broke with centuries of being non-aligned with the war powers. That is a major setback for our movement. that Finland and Sweden join NATO. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm glad you met someone from Finland who could speak to it. But you can see the speakers list coming together. So if we have like 7 speakers and each of them spoke for 7 minutes, that would be great. We could probably, 7 minutes times 7, that would be a good chunk of time. And if we set it up for a 90-minute webinar, there would be plenty of time for questions because but that would be my proposal, that we keep it at 7 or less. And so start thinking of who the speakers could be. And so I know we definitely have to have Ann Wright. And we always do the all women panel. So it would be all women representing. And then, see, we should be doubling the size of sections in WILF International from 50 to 100. So if we could get Finland to start creating, reviving their section, that would be great. So
We have two
George, you know,
hands
we
up.
do have that heart.
Yes, we have two hands up, and we're using time. Nancy and Linda have their hand up. I don't know the order of who put it up when.
Well, Nancy, I will ask you to hold it, and Linda, and then we have to move to the next item on the agenda. So Linda, what is it that you wanted to say?
I wanted to express my optimism, because that should the WILF branches in Europe revive, especially in Sweden and Finland, that they or other civil society peace groups encourage their governments to insist that they will join NATO under certain conditions, and that NATO, and those conditions being to remove NATO's nuclear weapons from the borders around Russia. This is, I mean, if you know, when the word first came out, both my husband and I were saying it was tragic for Finland and Sweden to just reverse their non-aligned status. It just was. This is a tragic result of the Ukraine war, and but if Sweden and Finland can have an impact within NATO and say, hey, nukes out, or otherwise we're not going to join, or nukes out, but this is our position. We want the nukes out, and join with the other countries who have had statements to that effect. I believe it was in Germany that there was a near majority in their General Assembly, their Bundestag, to remove. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, you're going on a little bit too long now, but I do get your point. But one of the lessons that I've learned in my 55 years as an organizer is that change happens from the bottom up. See, when over 60% of people said, we want NATO, we're afraid, then the government of Sweden went along with it, and Finland went along with it. We're going to have that same kind of groundswell from people. So it takes a lot longer than we would like. It's really like a 20-year plan. So thank you, George, for putting up the chart, because it is the next item on the agenda. So you're making it bigger. I'll have to make it bigger on my phone. So George, if you could just go across the chart and explain to people what it is from the goal. This is the one primary goal. So George, could you do that? And everybody else, please mute yourself because I hear background noises. Go ahead, George.
All right, so as y'all can see, this is a 30-month chart. It starts for this month and goes through the end of our current WILF administrators being the head of WILF. So the goal we have here, as you can see, make it a little bigger, is that we, at least in 10 branches by December of 2024, we have held actions or events on no NATO. And then if you jump to the strategic objective, one of the things we want to be able to do is build enough ground strength, as Teresa mentioned, that WILF US and our partners call for a public hearing in DC on ending NATO. Now, our allies and partners here that we've started, at this point, Teresa and I have worked on this chart and shared it with y'all. The ally organizations that we imagine that we have and we do have are Code Pink, World Beyond War, Peace Action, and I put Peace Action, all of it, not just Massachusetts Peace Action, and UFPJ. And the individuals here include the individuals who were at the press conference in support of the TPNW, Eleanor Holmes Norton, James McGovern, Jim McGovern here, y'all in Massachusetts, Earl Blumenauer, and Don Bayer and Ilan Omar. All of them were at the press conference. Ray McGovern we know as a supporter. And here under education and research, we've included last night's webinar. I'll add the recording link here as soon as I can, as well as information that Nancy shared. That 2030 report is absolute must read. The fact sheet is helpful from the 2030 report, especially if we can revise that to be used as education for our branches. All of this information is worth checking out. And the final declaration on the TPNW that was issued on June 27th is included here as well. These activities include last night's webinar, today's meeting, the July meeting of the Black Liberation Caucus for WILF, because Black Liberation Caucus will be a strong supporter of this work. And then upcoming, there is COP27, November 7th through the 18th, the Congressional Black Caucus Legislative Conference, September 28th to October 2nd. And then the webinar that we are talking about will happen in October. And next year, next November 27th through December 1st, is the 2MSP meeting in New York City. So that is our chart so far. Comments?
Well, George, George, on the allies and partners, we should list all of the folks who have signed on to the Eleanor Holmes Norton, not the least of which is Barbara Lee, who is very much committed from the Oakland area. So Barbara Lee should be added down with the individuals. And part of what we do with this chart at our meetings, everyone, is we all get to add to the chart. We don't have much time today to actually do it on this call, but since everybody has a copy of the chart, you can email George with additions because it is a collective work in process, a living document. And so I want to make sure that we complete this meeting by the time I'm going to get kicked out of this hotel, which is 1 hour. So George, you added Barbara Lee.
Could I make a comment? This is Nancy.
And Robin Lloyd has her hand up.
Go ahead, Nancy. Yeah, go ahead,
Yes,
Nancy,
thanks.
and then Robin.
because I know we have a meeting coming up in August. I'd like to suggest that if people look at some of those documents under education research, that we might want to consider aspects of vocabulary, because Actually, if you read those, you'll find that NATO describes itself extremely well. And there's a vocabulary that they use that we tend not to use. For example, they talk about full spectrum dominance. They talk about lawful autonomous weapons. There's a whole new dimension to the kinds of weapons in addition to nuclear. So I think if we work up a sort of vocabulary list that we can begin to use and toss back at NATO and use for our education, it would be really productive. Also, I have a connection in Sweden, a wonderful woman, young woman in Wilf, Sweden, that we might reach out to for the webinar.
Well, that sounds great. And in answer to Linda's question in the chat, the Black Liberation Caucus, we're all members of WILF. So we should not be in the allies and partners because we're actual members of WILF and we're in branches. So Robin, you're next.
Yeah, okay, my thought about the webinar and reaching out to Latin America and especially Colombia, which has just had a monumental transition to perhaps a progressive government. WILF has had, and I think hopefully still does, has a pretty active branch, section there. And I would be willing to reach out and see if we could get someone to speak, because it could be very tricky for this new progressive government to actually push back on the NATO thing that the previous government agreed to. Hopefully they would, but anyway, I would be glad to try to, I've made 2 films on the drug war in Colombia, and I've been there twice, so I know or did know some of the people who are in that section.
Well, thank you, Robin. Please lower your hand. On the goal we have for the 10 branches, we have several branches represented in this subcommittee. George and I bring 4 branches to the table: the Fannie Lou Hamer branch, the Metro Atlanta branch, the Southern Piedmont branch, and the Triad branch. We have the Burlington branch. We have the Jane Addams branch, which is a virtual branch, but folks, I think, would like to be able to participate. And I know that Nancy meets with the Sacramento branch. And so
also, we would have representation with the Santa Cruz branch as well.
Wonderful. So you'll take care of the California branches, Nancy.
And I'll do that.
Pocky, you were saying that you're in the Massachusetts branch, but there's a Boston branch, but I don't know what branch exists in your part of Massachusetts. So are you in a branch, Pocky?
It's Boston.
Okay, Boston, which is a very powerful branch. And part of what I'll be doing in August of 2023 is a Northeast tour, which will be DC, Baltimore, Philly, New York, Rhode Island, and Boston. And so part of the tour is about the UN decade and reparations, but we will certainly add no NATO to the tour. And I have folks who are hosting the tour. There are quite a few groups in Boston that are willing to host the tour, including Massachusetts Peace Action, which is based in Cambridge. And then of course we have the WILF branch. So that's what I wanted to say about the goal, so that we really are clearly focused on where we want to be by the end of the 30 months. See, part of the work that George and I do is basically teaching strategic planning. So I'm supposed to be doing a session on strategic planning for the Disarm Committee in August. They haven't picked a date yet, but hopefully it'll need to be at least a 90-minute to 2-hour session. My preference would be a 2-hour session because it'll be a workshop to teach strategic planning. How do you think strategically? And it's something I began to learn in 1990. So I've been at this a long time. So this is a standard kind of chart that we use to outline our work. There is a lot more to the work, as Nancy was noting, of the documents that we need to put together, the fact sheets that we need to put together, a kind of, this is why no NATO. So if somebody could do a fact sheet on why no NATO, that would be great. I think Medea Benjamin did a good job in her Counterpunch article that we can draw from. And so George, is a Counterpunch article listed under education and research?
It's not currently. I can add it.
Yeah, the Medea Benjamin Counterpunch punch or article should definitely be listed as a resource. And Vijay Prasad's article, which came out yesterday, should be there. So we'll keep adding to the research and education a part of it, because that is the key part, is that we gotta know, people gotta know why we say no NATO. So the one thing, George, if you could take down the chart and put the agenda up real quick so we can make sure we've covered everything.
Could I just ask another question?
Yes, Nancy, because the question for you is, when do you want to meet in August? Because you're going to be facilitating the August meeting, Nancy.
Yes, well, so my first question is, maybe in the August meeting, we could revisit the goals of the branches by 2024. I have some ideas about that. So perhaps in building the agenda, I could consult with you, with the group. And secondly, the second week of August would be better for me than the third week. I don't know how that would fit with everybody else.
Well, just name the date that you prefer.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm sitting here in a hospital cafeteria and I do not have my calendar in front of me.
Oh, you don't have
somebody could-
access. You don't have access to a calendar in your phone.
Can you see the screen?
Oh, there, sure, sorry. It's just very noisy in here. And Tuesday, let's see. Thank you, George, for putting that up. Let's see. Do we want to stick to a Friday morning? Is that something to do?
Well, it works for me. I have every Friday in August open.
How would Friday the 12th be?
Works for me.
That's fine.
How about everybody else?
So Robin, Linda, and Pocky, look at your calendars, please.
Actually, I'm flying back from a court appearance in Minnesota on the 12th, so it's not good.
Okay, well then let's move it to, how would Monday the 14th be? Excuse me, Monday the 15th, how would that be?
Works for me.
But we can try, I can try that, yes.
Okay,
What about you, Robin?
yeah, sure.
So Nancy, what's your time, your start time preference?
Well, I will be in the East Coast there then, not in California. So I could meet whatever is convenient, 9, 10, 11 in the morning. What suits everybody?
Well, I'm an early riser, so I love morning meetings.
How
I
about
prefer
9
10 or
o'clock? 9
11.
o'clock.
Yeah, okay.
George,
I won't be my best at 9, but I can be there.
Well, we can do 10 o'clock on the 15th.
10 is great.
Is that
is
suiting
10
everybody? Robin,
Yeah, okay.
Linda?
10 is better than 9. I'm with George. on that.
Okay, 10
You too.
o'clock on Monday, the 15th of August, correct?
Very good.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much,
Now,
everybody.
Now, are you gonna try to do the meeting in 1 hour, or do you think you'll need longer?
Well, I'll try to do it in an hour and follow your model. Let's maybe schedule it for an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay. So from 10 a.m. to 11:15 on August 15th.
Okay,
So that's the last item on the agenda with 3 minutes to spare. George, I don't think there's any chat to save, but as soon as the recording is ready, could you please post it to the Disarm committee list?
yes, I will.
And I'll get out of this hotel before they throw me out.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody
All
for a
right.
great meeting.
Take care.
Robin, do you have something you have to say?
Yeah, I want to ask Pocky, can you get to Rochester on the Thursday, the 25th? I know that's when you'd be traveling. but
Yes,
That might be the only day that we can have this little NATO discussion in Rochester.
Thursday evening,
Thursday, yeah, or
the
late after-
21st.
Yeah, like.
I'm
5
there.
o'clock. Okay,
Okay,
All right,
Wonderful.
Thank you.
thank you.
all right, y'all have a great rest of
Right.
your
Good to
week
see
and
you all.
weekend.
Take
Travel safely,
Thank you.
Teresa.
Thank you.
Talk to y'all
Thank you.
later.
Yeah,
Bye.
safe-
Nice to
Bye.
be with you.
safe travels,
Bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.